Here we go. Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us from many different time zones as our speakers today. So thank you for taking the time for being here with us. My name is Jessica. I will be doing just a very brief introduction. I want to thank you all on behalf of the Moot Alumni Association and Careers in Arbitration for joining us. Special thanks to our wonderful speakers today who are taking the time to share their experiences and, reliving the Vis Moot blues with us a couple months after the competition. It is my absolute privilege to introduce the moderator, who will then introduce you all to our speakers. Our moderator for today is Fontane Wong, who is currently a Pupil barrister based in Hong Kong. Prior to commencing her pupillage, she served as a marshal to judges at the High Court of Hong Kong. Fontane read law at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, during which she was a mootie for her school. And since her time as a mootie, she has then moved on to coaching other teams for the Vis Moot, and she has been a wonderful part of our MAA core team for the past year, where she was working on conferences and events. Thank you so much, Fontane, for guiding our discussion today. And with that, I'm happy to leave it to you. And everybody, I hope you enjoy the discussion, and I hope there will be many questions for our speakers at the end. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jessica, for the kind introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Fontane Wong, the moderator of today's panel. So welcome all to the webinar. We all know that the Vis Moot brings us incredible skills in legal writing, oral advocacy, and even a global network. But how do we actually turn that into a job in the arbitration field? Our panel today will share some practical strategies to help you leverage your Moot experience into a real career and international arbitration. So let me introduce our speakers for today. First, we have Professor Edgardo Muñoz. It's a professor at Universidad Panamericana School of Law in Mexico. And beyond his academic responsibilities, he has acted as an arbitrator and counsel in numerous arbitral proceedings across different jurisdictions and legal systems. He holds 2 Master of Laws and also a Doctor in Laws. Professor Muñoz is part of the Vis Moot Foundation, the CISG Advisory Council, and also the Union in Mexico. He also regularly publishes in the field of international business law and comparative law. And then next we have Flávia Furtado, the Deputy Secretary General of CAM-CCBC. She has extensive experience in dispute resolution, acting as a case manager at CAM-CCBC for 3 years before becoming the head of Institutional Development Department. Flávia is also responsible for some of the institution's academic publications, quantitative and qualitative data research. She also organizes the CAM-CCBC Arbitration Congress. Next, we have Johannes. Johannes works with HANEFELD, an international dispute resolution boutique law firm with offices in Hamburg and Paris. Johannes is admitted to the German bar and acts as counsel in arbitration and also litigation matters. He holds a doctorate in law in the field of international arbitration. Johannes is an alumnus of the University of Münster and has coached several teams for the Vis Moot over the past years. He is also the vice president of the MAA. Last but not least, we have Antonia Hotter. Antonia is part of the team which won the Eric E. Bergsten Award for Best Team Orals in the 30th Vis Moot. She studied law at the University of Vienna, and starting in June, she will join WilmerHale's international arbitration team in London as an intern. Previously, she worked as a research assistant at the University of Vienna's Department of Civil Procedure. She also interned with the dispute resolution team at Baker McKenzie and also completed a judicial clerkship in the Higher Regional Court of Vienna. So without further ado, let's get the webinar started. Perhaps I will start with Professor Muñoz. You have built a very remarkable career that spans academia and practice, both as an arbitrator and counsel. So do you have any advice for mooties who are deciding between pursuing a PhD or an academic career versus becoming a practitioner? And perhaps specifically, how does the Vis Moot experience could help those who are interested in combining teaching or research with practice?
Thank you, Fontane, and thank you for everyone attending this webinar. It's an honor to be here sharing the panel, at least from this side, with Anna, Flávia, Antonia, Johannes, and you. And also thank you to Jessica for organizing all this. I wanna be informal and tell you that you and me have a lot in common. Although I am the oldest person here, as you can notice, actually I'm not usually the oldest. Usually I'm one of the youngest when it comes to conferences and webinars. But today I am basically the senior dean here. And this is because, as you did, I participated in the Vis Moot 22 years ago. Yes, that was the 11th Vis Moot in Vienna. It was the first edition only in Hong Kong. Imagine that. And at the time, the Moot looked a bit different. It was not as big. There were not as many pre-Moots. But I think for the time, it was already a fantastic, probably the best experience I had in my law studies, at least in my undergraduate studies. And the Vis Moot became actually my first international family. Later on, it happened that I moved from one country to another, and that I met many people, and that now I am part of different international families. But the Vis Moot is very close to my heart because it was the first. And it was the first, and it was the launching of my personal career, and also of my professional career, and also of many personal happy moments, I would say. So going back to your question, Fontane, I'm sorry that I took a bit, but I want to feel everyone to know that I've been in their shoes, and I'm talking from the future. Actually, I'm talking from what you will become or exceed to become, because I don't have as many achievements as you could in 20 years. But coming back to your question, I would recommend that you do not see academia and practice as mutually exclusive paths. Doing a PhD or staying close to a law faculty, teaching as a lecturer gives you time to think deeply, write carefully, and develop an intellectual voice. And practice as counsel, as an arbitrator, gives you a closer look to real problems, of course, and commercial realities. And so it's probably the best lawyers who get to combine in a way. I'm not saying that you have to do a PhD, obviously, or that you have to take an academic path, and that you must necessarily practice a bit. But I've seen many lawyers who do one and a bit of the other, or both together, and usually they are very strong professionals. And I think that especially now in the time of AI, these two how would you say, these two caps will help us a lot to maintain a strong profession. And if you see that in practice, you look at many of the best known arbitration practitioners. Usually they write. Usually they are in speaking at conferences as if they were law professors or academics. Usually they teach at least during the summer, and I think this is because on the one hand, and this is a reality, the arbitration community is full of overreachers. I mean, people that overreach things, and probably they are paid less than what they have studied or going through. And the mood is actually one of the best examples. I mean, you did all this besides your law studies, and probably some other in your generation went to different, more local practices and still make a good living. And then when it comes to what to choose between academia or legal practice, I think you should choose by what you feel like, by temperament, not by prestige. If you feel inclined of studying legal questions and you always feel like a fish in the water, as we say in Spanish, in your law school, in your university, and want to pursue your studies, just do that. Doesn't matter that other people are doing other things. And on the contrary, if you were never really, focused on books, writing, studying, and you were more like attracted by real problems, you should go to practice first and later on try to combine a bit of both. So I would stop here to give the floor to the other speakers today.
Thank you, Edgardo. You talked about how to choose between academia and legal practice. So how about Johannes? You're currently the co-president of the MAA, and from your unique vantage point at the helm of the MAA, what are the most effective but often overlooked ways for a recent mootie to stay involved in the arbitration community? And why should someone who just finished their first moot consider joining the MAA?
Thank you very much, Fontane, for your warm words of welcome and for moderating this fabulous session. Thank you, Jessica, for making all of this possible. It really is a pleasure to be here together, share this panel with Flávia, Antonia, and Edgardo. And before diving into this specific question, I would really like to echo what Edgardo just said and also illustrate this with a personal anecdote in a way. All of you who are currently joining this webinar, you're at a stepping stone. You already achieved so much by being involved in the moot and by going through those really formative weeks and months. And those months will have an impact on everything in your professional career. And there will be time and again moments where you look back in gratitude and also with enthusiasm of all the things that you have experienced. And personally, for me, for example, today here in this session, that is when Edgardo speaks about all the experiences during his mooting days. I still remember how I, around a decade ago, was sitting in Hong Kong as a student coach back then and arbitrating a friendly round together with Edgardo on a panel. So it really is this experience that comes back time and again. And I would like to encourage all of you to make the most out of it. And now you might ask yourself, and that is what this question was about that you raised, Fontane, how to do so. And I would say there are a couple of ways to really make the most out of it. Maybe a few more conventional ways, and then maybe also a couple of overlooked ways. What is indeed very effective if you enjoyed being a mootie is actually returning as a coach. Now, that is, I would say, one of the classical ways to stay involved. And it is very, very effective and beneficial because it gives you a different hat. In a way, it teaches you leadership skills at a relatively early stage of your career. And I think personally, I never learned as much about people and how to work with people in a small team as I did during my years of coaching. So that is one way to stay involved. Become a coach either for your former team or potentially also for another team to really build this global network in a way. You can return as an arbitrator to Hong Kong and Vienna to really also develop those judgment skills of arbitrators. But, and maybe that's one of those overlooked ways to stay involved, you can also return on a regular basis to local pre-moots, to local practice moots, because that helps you to really build a local network, a regional network, in a region that might be of particular interest of you, that you might be particularly enthusiastic about. And of course, another way to really stay involved is becoming member of a young organization, of a young association. Now, one of the fascinating things about the arbitration community is how active it actually is as a community. All around the world, there are young organizations, regional organizations that help you to really build your brand and also build your network. And when I'm encouraging you to join such networks, I'm not so much thinking about primarily signing up to their network, but really thinking about becoming effectively involved. Attend their events, reach out to organizations and ask them whether there are any meaningful ways of how you can contribute to their activities. Because that is one of the steps that kind of encourages you or helps you to become really actively involved in such organizations. And you can do this on different levels. You can, on the one hand, again, rather follow this regional approach and join regional organizations. Many jurisdictions have their own regional organization. Or you can, or better to say, additionally, you can join global organizations. And I wouldn't say that that's mutually exclusive, but rather mutually beneficial. And one of those international organizations is, for example, the Moot Alumni Association. And we are currently recruiting our next core team. So really, I would like to encourage every one of you here involved who wants to become part of a truly global organization and who's enthusiastic about shaping the events that surround the Vis Moot to consider applying for such a role on our core team by this Monday, actually, because that really allows you to stay in the loop. Because at the end of the day, what the Moot is about is kind of remaining connections. And that is also what makes this panel here so wonderful, that I know everyone involved here for many years by now. And those are a couple of ways to really stay in the loop and stay engaged. And with that, I go back to you, Fontane.
Thank you, Johannes. You talked about joining regional and global organizations. So this really brings me to my next question. This is for Anna and Flávia. You are the Deputy Secretary General of CAM-CCBC, one of the most important arbitration centers in the world. So for a Vis Mootie who may not want to join a law firm immediately or haven't decided whether they want a career in academia, what opportunities exist within arbitral institutions, and what makes a Vis Moot alumni stand out when applying for roles in these arbitral institutions?
Thank you so much, Fontane. That's very kind of you. And thank you also the MAA and Jessica for putting together this webinar, and for everyone that joined, and especially my colleagues here. It's a pleasure to be here talking about CAM-CCBC, the Vis Moot, all topics that I love the most. So starting off by your second question, Fontane, I only got the job at CAM-CCBC because I participated at the Moot. So for me, it's something that it's very natural to look at people who participated in the Moot as prospects for CAM-CCBC and to work with us. But I only got this job actually because CAM-CCBC sponsored my team at the time that I was participating in the Moot. My team was very inexperienced. It was the first time that we were participated at the Vis Moot. And so it was very irresponsible of CAM-CCBC to sponsor inexperienced teams, but they did it anyway. And that happened because we have people at CAM-CCBC that really believe in the transformative value of the Vis Moot, such as Luisa Comel, Carlos Forbes, all people that were at the high leadership of CAM-CCBC from years to come, and they have been participating in the Moot and supporting the Moot ever since. And they also really support what the Moot entails, everything it entails, and its transformative value. So going back to your first question and talking about the opportunities for mooties at CAM-CCBC and other arbitral institutions, specifically regarding CAM-CCBC, I see like 3 departments in which could be like a cool opportunity for mooties leaving law school and getting to work in arbitration. So we have the secretariat, which is the case managers, the assistant case managers, the coordinators of the secretariat, and they're basically tackling the cases day to day. We have the institutional development team, which is basically BD. So they're organizing events, doing cooperation agreements, handling social media, and much more. And there's also the general secretariat, which is where I am right now. The general secretariat usually requires a little bit more of experience, but the secretariat and the institutional development department both have entry-level opportunities. And I think it's really a really cool experience to have before you join a law firm, or even like if you want to stay with us, we are happy to have you forever here as well. But regarding the secretariat, for example, you have the opportunity to work with like 400 arbitration cases, and you get to meet a lot of arbitrators, you get to meet a lot of counsel, and especially if you're not sure which sector or industry of law you'd like to specialize, it's cool to have an experience with a large amount of cases to understand which direction you would like to go. So that would be important for you to understand which type of dispute you'd like to specialize. At CAM-CCBC, you can get a glimpse of almost everything and then realize what would you want to do. Or even if you'd like, for example, to work with an arbitrator as a tribunal secretary, that's also something that you can go for as well. But we also have opportunities at the BD team, and I think that's something that it's not talked about a lot, but there's also that that profile of a person that participated in the Moot, loves arbitration, but are not quite sure if they want to do counsel or if they want to actually work in law. But we have like this different sector of CAM-CCBC in which you can work in organizing events, networking, doing cooperation agreements. And this is always in the field of arbitration, but not actually like working in with the cases. So it's also an interesting opportunity for people that loves what the Vis Moot entail, especially the social environment of the Vis Moot, but are not looking to get into technical terms of arbitration and everything. That's something that I think it's interesting. You learn a lot about KPIs, social media engagement, all the corporate lingo that you see from corporate memes, and sometimes you don't quite understand. But when you work in BD at CAM-CCBC, you gotta get a glimpse of all this, and it's very interesting to learn different sides of arbitration as well. So I think those would be like the entry-level opportunities for people leaving law school right now, and I think both are super interesting. I did both at CAM-CCBC, and I got to learn a lot from both. But going back to your second question, Fontane, and going very quickly at the second question, I think when I see someone that did the Moot applying for a job at CAM-CCBC and I see the Vis Moot at their CVs, my mind goes straight to the soft skills that this person gained when participating at the Vis Moot, because I think technical knowledge, you can get it elsewhere, but I think the soft skills you get from the Moot is not something that is very developed during law school, especially like in my experience. I don't feel like we get a lot of training in problem solving, creativity, teamwork at the level that we are required to do at the Vis Moot. So when I see someone that did the Vis Moot, that's the profile of a candidate that I see. And I also see a person that loves arbitration and is specifically worried about the systematic view of arbitration. And that's something that is very important for an institution as well, because when you're acting as counsel, for example, you are usually focused on the specific outcome of a case, which is completely normal. But when you're working at an institution, you also have to worry about the whole environment of arbitration and the systematic view of arbitration and how things can be improved. So I think a person that participated in the Moot might also have this type of passion. And I think that's very important for a person working at an arbitral institution. I think that would be it for now.
Thank you, Anna, Flávia. You mentioned some entry-level opportunities in. So, Antonia, you've secured an internship offer at WilmerHale. You're also, I think, the closest to perhaps most of our audience in terms of the career stage, as you've participated in the Vis Moot quite recently. So can you walk us through the concrete steps that you took from the Moot itself to receiving the internship offer at WilmerHale? How did you translate your Vis Moot success into a tangible job opportunity? And is there anything that you wish you had known earlier?
Thank you, Fontane, and thanks to all of you for being here. It's a pleasure. I want to be honest with you today. When I applied for the Vis Moot back in 2022, it was, I didn't really know what arbitration is, and I sometimes joke that I applied for the Vis not because of arbitration, but in spite of arbitration. So I think it's fair to say that entering the Vis Moot, I didn't have a master plan for launching my career at all. And I think that we often feel the pressure to know everything, to have specific goals, to have every step of our career mapped on a map. But very often this is just not possible because a lot of opportunities cannot be predicted. There are a lot of factors that we cannot involve, that we cannot control. And yeah, what we can control, I think, is the effort that we put into a general direction. We can work hard, we can stay curious, we can put ourselves into environments where we think opportunities might present themselves, and we can follow paths where we think we can grow personally and professionally. And I think this has always been my strategy, if you will, to just do these things without having a specific plan in my mind. But if I had to pick 3 things that helped me to get where I am today, I think it would be first reaching out to persons, to people, networking, as you say, not to secure a job immediately, but with a genuine interest for the person I'm speaking to. What do they do? How did they get there? Do they like what they do, etc. And just makes the whole otherwise a bit tedious task of networking much more enjoyable, in my opinion. Second would be apply for opportunities, even if you think you are not 100% ready for it yet. This is especially important, in my opinion, for women who tend to look for job descriptions where they tick every box. But many of the opportunities or things I did were things where I thought, okay, this might be a bit too early for me. In fact, the Vis Moot itself was such an experience. I applied pretty early in my studies. I was also the youngest mootie in my team. And after all, it was not too early or anything. But of course, you might not know that. Yeah. And the third thing would be it would be have an interest or something aside from arbitration or even law in general. Because if you just focus on one thing entirely, you risk losing perspective. So for me, this has always been journalism, because I actually started studying law because I wanted to become a journalist, and everybody told me do anything but study journalism. So I studied law. yeah, and you say plans change. This was the plan I had set out for myself when I was 17 years old, and plans don't always change for the worse. Yeah, but it doesn't have to be journalism, obviously. It can be anything, really, any hobby, any interest. It's just important, I think, for mental health reasons, but also can help you stand out in an application process. And because you asked, Fontane, what I wish I'd known earlier is, I would say, know that you do not need the perfect plan, and to know that a lot of careers are less linear than they appear from the outside. Yeah, and just, continue doing excellent work, stay curious, be brave, and then everything will be fine, I think. Yeah.
Thank you, Antonia. So we have heard from the speakers about multiple pathways that a Vis Mootee can take after the Moot. So perhaps now we can talk about some practical tips that Mootees can implement as they move forward with their careers. So my next question is for Anna, Flávia, and Antonia, but Edgardo and Johannes, if you have any thoughts, please feel free to jump in as well. So the question really is, what advice do you have for a Vis Moot participant who enjoys the research and writing side of the Moot, but is not sure whether they want to go straight into a law firm to practice?
I don't know if Antonia would like to start, but
go ahead if you have some ideas.
Yeah,
but
sure.
I can say something.
I mean,
of course, yeah.
I don't want to be biased, but if you love research and you love arbitration, I think you would be a great fit for an arbitral institution. We do a fair amount of research, not only for internal purposes or strategic purposes, benchmarking, but we also write articles, do media training, and so much more. So research is like a fundamental part of what an institution does. So you may also look into that if you really like this part of the Moot. You could also work as a tribunal secretary, or maybe work with a professor that does a lot of expert opinion work, or even pursue a master or a doctorate, or do both, as Edgardo mentioned. But another tip that I would give that and as Antonia mentioned, your career is not linear. You don't have to do one thing at a time. Maybe you can join, for example, an organization while you are working as counsel. And nowadays we have a bunch of youth organizations such as the MAA. We also have Young ICA and other institutions that have, for example, blogs, which you can be an author of an article, or you can work as an editor, and that also be a nice way to implement your passion for research and writing into your daily lives. So that could be interesting. Doing a little bit of shameless marketing, CAM-CCBC also has a youth group called New Gen, and New Gen also has a blog, so I invite you all to get to know New Gen. We accept articles in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. So if you're interested, there's also that option. And CAM-CCBC and the New Gen CAM-CCBC, we also have a bunch of research work into data. And also New Gen drafts a few books and books about several themes relating to arbitration. And also we do have a guide on how to organize your first team to go to the Moot, and how to organize the memo phase of the Moot, the training sessions for the oral rounds and everything. So that's something that you should also look into. But I mean, in general, I think there are ways in which you can implement your passion for research and writing into not only your job, but also into some pro bono work that you may find within the framework of arbitration. I think it's something that maybe something global, such as Young Geeka, or maybe something regional, and you can look into it. I think that would be Fontane for this one.
Yeah. I would say the first thing coming to my mind is, you could always, of course, explore academia. In Austria, Germany, Switzerland, it's not uncommon that people pursue a PhD or stay at university for 2, 3 more years. And I think this can be a really formative experience. There are usually very smart and ambitious people around you, and you just have the time you perhaps don't have at a law firm. Yeah. But as Edgardo said, always whatever the temperament is. Yeah.
Thank you, Anna, Flávia, and Antonia. So my next question is for Edgardo and Johannes. But again, if Antonia and Anna, Flávia, you guys have any thoughts, please feel free to jump in as well. So Edgardo and Johannes, both of you have built careers that combine legal practice, university teaching, and research. So how has your involvement with the Vis Moot helped you integrate your various professional identities? And do you have any advice to a mootie who aspires to a similarly multifaceted career?
Would you
Johannes,
like to go
please.
first, Edgardo?
Oh, no, go ahead, Johannes, please.
Okay. Thank you very much, Edgardo. Well, I would say as a key takeaway from the mooting experience is it is really about opening doors. And in that regard, I would really like to encourage you to in a way, on the one hand, be patient a little bit. So over all those years after having done the Vis Moot, basically each and every opportunity in some way I can still trace back to the Vis Moot experience. And for me, that has been, for example, finding an academic mentor with whom I published my first articles. It was finding my PhD supervisor through the Vis Moot, who then supervised my doctoral thesis. It was finding the topic of my doctoral thesis. So basically all those steps, not necessarily in the first year after I was, of course, myself a mootie, but over the time, there were several steps, several doors that opened, and you might not yet expect those doors to open at some point in time. But if you stay involved, and as my co-panelists put it, if you stay curious, those doors will open over time. So from this, in a way, abstract level, I would say really appreciate that you might not yet know which opportunities might arise. And as Antonia has put it, for example, also if you want to stay involved in a bit at an earlier career stage, become a research assistant, research associate with a faculty. And then from there on, you can see where your path will develop. Looking ahead a little bit, and that relates to your second question, Fontane, any advice, any specific advice? And I would like to connect this with my very personal perspective. So basically, I practice as legal counsel for commercial and investment disputes full time. So providing legal counsel is my daily business, my daily tools of trade. Aside from that, I am in the incredibly lucky position to also still be a lecturer for international dispute resolution at my faculty where I was a Vis Moot coach, where I did my PhD, etc. So do find for yourself, try to identify those synergies, and that can be on different levels. For example, one of those levels is finding, if you want to pursue, in a way, both careers, finding a firm that supports you. I have the incredible luck to have a very supportive firm that encourages me to pursue such academic endeavors as well. It also means, if you think about it, try to find ways that work well for you. For example, if you want to practice full-time as a legal counsel, but you want to still remain involved with academia, find ways how that works. That might be not lecturing on a weekly basis, but for example, looking for block courses where you might still be involved in lecturing. Find ways for publications. And in that regard, I really also want to echo what has been already said by Antonia. Be courageous. also at a relatively early stage of your career. Be courageous to publish, be courageous to go out there, because all of you have so much knowledge, and that really will be appreciated. And with that, to Edgardo.
Thank you, Johannes. I've been taking notes of what everyone said, and I have a lot to say, actually, but there is not enough time because it's so interesting. I'm going to try to be brief, but well, participating in the Moot basically is one of the causes of the result. We have all heard about the butterfly effect, right? And actually, for me, probably was the first the first flight of the butterfly that the Vis Moot in that respect. After I did the Moot, the Moot was very important to me to realize, actually, as someone coming from what you call the global south, or outside the global, the arbitration capitals, or the main knowledge centers. For me, it was very important. The Vis Moot was very important to know where I was in my own level and what I needed to do to reach the level of other competitors, actually. And that helped me to understand that I needed to go abroad again. And so if you look at my CV, you see that I was formed and trained abroad, Mexico. But the Moot never went away. It always accompanied me during wherever I was. My first publication after my master, or based in my master dissertation, was in the Vindobona Journal, which is the Vis Moot Alumni Association journal, which I recommend you have a look at and you publish there as soon as possible. Then I stayed in contact with the MAA, and I was given the task of managing something called the Liaison Project, which is basically to promote and select the people who are going to represent the MAA, the Moot Alumni Association, in the UNCITRAL meetings. I also encourage you to do that, to get involved with the MAA work and to participate in the Liaison Project, because during those meetings, you meet important people. Then, if it wasn't for the Moot, I'm sure I wouldn't have been given or admitted to work for Professor Ingeborg Schwenzer, that you know, right? I was hired as his research assistant, and at the same time, I was doing my PhD. So the Moot always was one of the reasons for this opportunity as well. I coached before going abroad. I coached for a couple of years my teams in Guadalajara. And then I went abroad. I participated in the Vis Moot eventually 1 year and another as arbitrator or as coach. And after my PhD, I think that if it wasn't for Professor Schwenzer probably and the Vis Moot, I wouldn't have been hired as a lawyer, because after my PhD, I went and worked as a lawyer in a law firm in Geneva. And I trained myself again there until a point where I decided to come back to my country, and not even to the capital of my country, but to the second main city. And I remember well the time I told my bosses there at the law firm in Geneva, I want to go back to my country, and I think I'm gonna do both academia and practice. So they look at me, they stare at me like, you are losing the opportunity of your life. And probably I was. Because, being in a Swiss law firm, Geneva, doing arbitration only is something that is not often given as an opportunity. And they say, well, just give you an advice. One of them said, I will give you an advice. There is a time during your professional career where you have to plant your flag in the ground. You cannot move. You should stay, and people have to see where you are and what you do. And this is actually very important, especially in the old days when there is not so much mobility and social media, and you couldn't make your voice easily. And the other said, well, I have met very few people that can do both academia and practice, and that can do it well. But when I have seen them, those good ones, they are very good, the other partner said to me. So I decided to came back. And I stayed in contact with the Moot. I obviously, I took a position as full professor. I trained the team. I organized a pre-Moot. I continue practicing. Like the reality of my country, I came back at the right moment where they needed arbitrators that were not conflicted, and suddenly I started having more cases than I first imagined. And I think I am a good example, and I don't want to show off that I'm a good example for people who may think that if you are not in the main arbitration capitals, you're not going to make it in this field. It's going to be difficult. It is difficult always, even if you are in the main capitals, right? Because arbitration is a very small market, and there is so many talented people around that is not easy. But it's a beautiful market. It's a beautiful community, more than a market. It's a beautiful family, and you can still succeed. I never divorced from the Moot. We always been together. It takes a lot of efforts because many of the Moot, as you did when you were a mootie, this is considered by many extracurricular, but it's not actually. It gives you so much. I came back again as a coach to Hong Kong, and then I was given opportunities that close up my, rounded up my career. Last year, well, this year, I was the arbitrator in the final. I wasn't as lucky as Antonia, or as talented, I would say. I wasn't as talented as Antonia to make it to the final with my team when I had 22 years ago. But if you stay with the Moot, the Moot always pays back, right? And I really would say something as well. I was at some point vice president of the Moot Alumni Association, and I never been so much, of this kind of charismatic person like Johannes that can, manage and talk to the people, etc., etc. But still, they gave me the opportunity, and having worked with the Moot Alumni Association is one of the best things that happened to my life as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Johannes and Edgardo. So now moving on to the big final question, then that is open for all speakers. So a recent mootie who has the Vis Moot experience now on the CV and are now applying for internships, associate positions, or other roles, how can they actually leverage the Vis Moot experience? Does
Please,
anyone
Antonia
want to go first?
and Flávia, please go ahead.
Well, obviously, you should put it on your CV. This was the first way to leverage it. And apparently, there is sometimes the question where on the CV to put it. So I looked up the CV that I used for my internship now, and I just put it as a bullet point under my university in the education section, and then I have an awards scholarship section where I listed some of the most important awards. Two times, so it cannot be missed. But I think the most important thing is also to think about the people that you have met during the Vis Moot, and perhaps you've also spoken with them about how their law firm operates, and to just bring in this experience during your application process. But curious to hear what the others say.
I mean, I think your strategy will really depend on the job you're going for. assuming, of course, you're pursuing a position in arbitration, I would make sure to highlight it in my CV, my experience in the Moot. And of course, during the interview process, I would try to leverage the soft skills I gained from the experience in the Moot. For that, I think it's very important that you understand what you're getting into, so you can learn you need to learn more about the job, the firm, the team you're going to work with, the partners, and I would create a narrative in which I could include the Vis Moot skills I gain in a way that matches the job description and, of course, the firm's interests. So I think it's important to strategize this when you're going for a job as well. There's a fair amount of authenticity and, of course, being natural in the interview process, but I think you will become more confident if you have enough research to create this speech in your mind, which is kind of what we do at the Moot as well. So I think you guys have this skill already. But I also think you can leverage your Vis Moot skills for practically anything. Most of the people that were in my Vis Moot teams, they do not work in arbitration anymore. They work in other fields of law, or even like they left law at all. So I'm gonna give you a little story of my own. When I was participating in the Moot, I was actually training I was drafting memos and also training for the oral rounds. I applied for the summer job in the Disney park in Orlando. So I was applying for this job that was just a summer job, so I could get money to travel to Vienna. It was not related to law at all. The recruiter asked me if I was comfortable giving speeches in English. So I was like, okay, this is my time to shine. And then I proceeded to explain to her what the Vis Moot was, and that I was preparing for this competition in Vienna. And what I do in my free time is read this mock case, and memorize everything. And then I memorize a speech that usually goes around 14 minutes and one for rebuttal. And this is what I do for fun. This is what I do for the love of the game. Nobody's forcing me to do it. This is my hobby. And I mean, I explained to her what the Vis Moot was and everything, and I got the job, and they assigned me to a ride at the Magic Kingdom that had like the longest speech imaginable. At least it was not 14 minutes, but I mean, it might be a little crazy, but if you are creative enough, you can leverage your Vis Moot experience for anything. I think that
I fully wish to echo what you said, Flávia, about leveraging this experience, because I think that's another level from the soft skills. You learn so many soft skills, and that is essential, and that will get you to so many of your goals that you're striving for. But this wonderful story that you just shared, Ana Flávia, is, I think, a great illustration for what is even beyond the soft skills, and that is the experience. And whether it's a leverage outside of the legal sector that might give you this very practical or very good story to tell, at the same time also inside the legal practice and inside the Vis Moot community, it gives you this bond to so many people because you have a shared experience. And that is something that works fantastic as, for example, an icebreaker in any sort of interview situation. It works fantastic if you meet people at, let's say, a reception in a remote city that is outside of your regional community, but where you can really connect with people over the shared experience, because those people who have been there, they will understand the craziness of stumbling through Vienna and trying to orient yourself and where on earth is this Dachgeschoss. They will understand what the seafood dinner in Hong Kong is about. So you do have this common ground. And I think that experience is something that you can benefit from in the next week, but also in a decade from now on. And the second thing that I would say is that you can build up on is genuinely the people whose companionship you enjoy. You will meet so many fantastic people throughout your Vis Moot path. For example, I think personally for me, this session here today is a perfect example for this, with sharing this panel with people that I generally admire for what they have achieved in their different careers, and really try to find people whose community, whose companionship you enjoy, because that is, I think, at the end of the day, what will carry you throughout the years.
Antonia, your turn.
I already said the thing with the CV, so go ahead with whatever you have in mind.
Okay, I'm gonna just say something that you actually englobes both things that Johannes and Flávia said. One of them is that I think you should see the Moot as a life project. You may think that the Moot is something you only do when you are a student, and that probably if you keep going later on, you may assume or you wrongly think that people would say, well, this guy hasn't grown up or what. And in a way, yes, you haven't grown up because you keep having so much fun, right? But it's nice to have fun. But that's not the case, because especially now, you have people that participated like me 20 years ago, but you have also people that participated 30 years ago. So you have in the best spots in law firms. I mean, now you have people that is 50, 40 like me, or 50 in the best positions in companies, in governments, in academia that did the Moot. And so you will find people wherever, in places you did not imagine, that did the Moot and would understand what you are talking about. And so it's good that you keep in touch with the Moot for life. I would recommend. That's my recommendation. The second is that even if you do not do arbitration, you should, I mean, if you do other things, corporate law, litigation, IP, or even you go out of the legal services business, you keep in touch with the Moot. Because I think, as has already been said, the skills you get there, the community you get to work with is fantastic. And it's one of the best places to do public relations, the Vis Moot, and actually all the arbitration cocktails in general. There are many mandates, many words that come up from the Vis Moot and the arbitration cocktails that do not relate to arbitration. So even if you are doing other things, it's a great place to do public relations. And so that would be it from me.
Thank you to all the speakers, Edgardo and Flávia, Johannes and Antonia, for your invaluable insights. And I think this brings us to the end of today's webinar. And I think, as Johannes said earlier, the Vis Moot does open doors. There's no single path after the Vis Moot, be it academia, practice, institutions, or a mix of everything. And the Vis Moot really prepares you for all of them. And I think another key takeaway for myself is really to stay connected to the Vis Moot community. Vis Moot creates a special bond, and that bond can transfer into a global network. So consider being a coach or a guest judge. Your journey doesn't end when the competition does. You can also join organizations like the MAA to build your network further. So I guess we'll now open the floor for questions. If you have a question, please feel free to unmute, or you can simply type in the chat box, I guess.
I think I see a question in the Q&A section. I don't know, Fontane, if you can see those.
Right. Yes, I think there was a question from Kate. So I think she asked about what are the best ways to start coaching or recording video breakdowns, summarizing key points, or organizing regional rounds. So do any of the speakers have any thoughts on this question?
Probably I can comment on organizing your moot activities in your country, right? I think this is very important, especially if there is not already something going on that. Is something that will give you visibility. I was reading to an interview given by Alexander Fesas in the ICC bulletin. He's the general secretary of the ICC. He said that especially in your early career, it's very important to have exposure, and usually exposure is relatively easier if you have the opportunity, like Antonia, to go and work with WilmerHale at your early career. But if you don't have this opportunity, you have to make yourself some opportunities to give you exposure. And one of them is to organize events in your own city where probably there is not much arbitration going on. But there is at least one university that can organize a pre-moot and has a team and so on. And this can be as valuable as having the opportunity to work at a very well-known law firm.
Okay, so I think we've got another question. It's from Sadaf. It's about looking back, what would you have done differently in your preparation before the written phase started?
I think I got this one. For me personally, coming from a team that didn't have much experience and also didn't have much resources, I would ask for more help. I was so worried when I was a mootie that I would be bothering people if I were like to send an email asking for help or asking for someone to read what I have written, or for example, to have access to their library to do research. And I was really worried that that would be not be seen as a good gesture from a mootie. But staying as long as I did in the moot environment, I saw that people are so friendly and willing to help. So I would have been more open to asking for help if I were doing the moot again.
Thank you, Anna, Flavia. So I note the time, so perhaps we can have last two questions. So the next question is, how did you figure out whether you were better suited for the procedural or merits, and how early did that become clear?
Well, maybe a very brief note from me on this part. I wouldn't worry so much about the timing per se, so the moment in time when this happens, but rather where you do yourself more pleading. So what is it either the procedural part or the merits that you are genuinely interested about? Would you rather address the procedural issues, the procedural hiccups, or would you like to dive deep into the merits part of the issue? Because you will spend additional time on the specific issues that you're covering, so you should be really curious about this. And maybe as a very practical tip, if you identify such an interest at any point in time, do communicate this to your coaches, because depending on your team structure, it might also be the coaches that at the end of the day kind of assign individual participants to individual topics.
Thank you, Johannes. And perhaps the last question. As a fresher of a moot, how can a law student be ready to prepare for the Vis Moot? Perhaps, Antonia, would you like to take this one because you're the closest in terms of participating in the Vis Moot?
Sure. The question is how you can prepare the best, or yeah. Perhaps I would relax before everything starts off, because it got way more busy than I anticipated. Perhaps you can, tell your friends that you won't be available so much. This all came as a surprise to me because I didn't know it was gonna be such a hustle. I tried in the beginning. I mean, not everybody has the privilege, I know that, to continue doing exams on the side, and quickly realized that this is not going to work out. But we all beat ourselves up in the team because we planned to do some exams and then realized, okay, with the mood going on, we probably have to do less exams. But this probably depends a lot on where you study. And I know if you're studying in the UK or in the US, you can't just don't do anything academically in a semester. Yeah, but just chill a bit.
Thank you, Antonia. So thank you very much to all our speakers, Edgardo and Flávia, Johannes and Antonia, and also everyone for attending the webinar today. I hope the webinar has been helpful and all of you did have some useful takeaways from today's webinar. So thank you very much. And perhaps I'll now hand back the time to Jessica.
Thank you all very much. As you may have seen, the event has been recorded, so we will make sure to make it available to all of you on the MEA website and Careers in Arbitration. And thank you all again so much for joining. Thank you to our speakers. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, we hope to cross paths very soon, whether through the Vis Moot or some other path that we may find ourselves on. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you all.
A pleasure. See you, Johannes and Flávia,
Thank you.
Antonia, Fontane, Jessica.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.